Thank you, Brother Warnick. It's great to be here with you today. Truly appreciate this opportunity, and as Brother Warnick mentioned, he and I go back a long time, and he's an individual that I truly admire, man full of integrity and purpose. Greg asked that I just share a little bit about BD as we get started, so if I can get this to advance. BD is a global company. We have operations around the globe. We have about 50 manufacturing facilities, and you may not know BD as a company by name, but you probably know us by product. In fact, if you have gone to the doctor recently and gotten a shot, chances are you have used one of our syringes, and that's what we make in the business in which I work today. We own a very large share of the U.S. market of syringes, and if you get stuck with a shot for the flu, we thank you. We appreciate that. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. The last time I sat in this auditorium was about 15 years ago, and I think the prevailing thought that I had at that point in time was, am I really going to survive Capstone? Fantastic program, and I learned a tremendous amount from the experience. I truly admit that I'm humbled to be here with you today also. When you graduate from school, you receive a subscription as an alum to the BYU magazine, and every so often there's this article that comes out that profiles the academic performance of the incoming freshman class, and I'm amazed at the ever-increasing GPAs and ACT scores, and I'm always amazed, and I always conclude I'm very glad that I went to school when I did, because if I had to reapply today, I'm not so sure I would get in. This is a very exciting time for each of you, of course, in your lives. There are a lot of decisions that you'll make in the very near future. Where will you go to work? Where will you live? And maybe it is a little nerve-wracking at times to think about the decisions that you'll make over the next few years. But I believe the excitement should really outweigh the nervousness that you may feel. And why? Because I believe the world is truly starved for good men and women, future leaders who truly exhibit integrity, purpose, and character. And those are things which really characterize the students that go to this university. So let me ask, just by starting, how many of you, by raise of hands, have had a leadership experience, let's say in the last 24 months, maybe at church or on a mission or in some organization? Okay, probably almost everyone in this audience. Being a leader is easy, right? All you do is tell people what to do, and they do what you ask them to do. And maybe if you don't exactly know what to do as a leader, you go to the source of all wisdom. You might find the answer. As you look at this and you Google this, you say, oh, great. I only have about 379 million hits to wade my way through. So, indeed, there's no dearth of information about leadership and how to be a leader. In all of this, how do you really know what leadership principles work? And most importantly, how do you really know what leadership principles work for you? And how do you know what your own leadership style is? Sooner or later, of course, we continue to be leaders in the various aspects of our lives. And so today I'd like to cover 4 points where each of us can discover the leaders within ourselves. And I've tried to distill from my experiences points that might be most relevant to you at this stage of your lives. Let me just do one more informal survey. So how many of you are graduating, say, in the next year? Okay, how about in the next 2 years? Okay, so I'd probably say about 75% are graduating in the next 2 years. Sooner or later, you need to make a very important decision. Where are you going to go to work? And where are you going to move? And maybe you're married and have children. And are you going to drag your family across the country or move to a foreign place? And how do you really know if you're going to enjoy what you're signing up for. It's kind of a little bit of an unknown. The good thing is you won't only make this decision once in your life. In fact, a 2008 Bureau of Labor Statistics survey was conducted and found that on average a person spends about 4.1 years with a company. And so you'll make this decision about where you're going to go to work time and time again. Now, early in our careers as engineers, most of us don't go to work for, or in a leadership capacity, we go to work as an engineer, as an individual contributor. But I believe that those early roles that we have are very important in establishing our leadership skills. So how do those early career moves really affect your leadership learnings? Early in my career, I had a job in a plant where we made ophthalmic surgical blades. And as you can imagine, these blades were very, very small, about 1 to 2 millimeters in length and just incredibly sharp. And in this role, my responsibility was to take the product and the process and come up with some ideas and some recommendations as to how to automate this, to remove some of the labor content from the process. And thereby we would save the company some money. And so in embarking on this project, I went out and I spent time on the manufacturing floor and I talked to the operators to really understand what were the key characteristics of the process. I would also talk with the engineers who really were strong in design and understood what were some of the key design aspects I needed to factor in. And I also talked to some of the engineers in research and development who had a little bit of a better contact with the customer to understand what was important from a customer perspective. And so I went through the project and I made my recommendations. And at the same time, I kind of felt empty. I felt as if I didn't succeed as much as I wanted to. And it was a little bit disappointing for me. And while in this assignment, I learned a lot of really important things about the process and the product and the customer, et cetera, that were valuable for me in my career, no doubt. But what I learned that really helped me out was more about myself. I learned, first of all, that I really enjoyed getting out and talking to and interacting with the different levels of individuals in the organization, from folks down on the production floor to the senior leaders as we would present progress. I also learned that I really loved to speak Spanish. It was a language that I learned on my mission, and a lot of the operators in the company were from Spanish-speaking countries, and therefore, when I would talk to them, I got to speak Spanish. And it rekindled that love of the language. And it also, this was my first experience working in a manufacturing plant, and the pace was fast. And I had worked previously in a research and development function, and I learned a tremendous amount from that assignment. But I learned that I really loved manufacturing. The pace was fast. It was about solving problems quickly. And so those things that I learned about myself were as important as the engineering aspects itself. And it really helped solidify my knowledge of what I wanted to do with my career. From this experience and from others that I've seen in my career interacting with others, I've come to strongly believe that the probability of one's success is dramatically increased when there are alignment of 3 key things. One is the alignment of one's values. The second thing is what an individual is passionate about. And third, what may be considered your personal best, or where you really find your strengths. So let me just share this slide with you quickly. Simple 2x2 matrix. On the bottom axis, we have passion from low to high. Vertical axis, personal best. And really, I think when we're in that top right-hand quadrant of the matrix is when we have the greatest probability to deliver results. When we're in the top left-hand corner, you may have had this experience. You're really good at something, but you're really not interested in doing it regularly. And so you find boredom in that role. In the bottom right-hand corner, you may really enjoy doing something, but if it's not something you don't excel at, I would call this high risk. And the reason I would call it high risk is the company that you may work for, the organization that you may be involved with, may want results quicker than your ability to really deliver those results. And of course, the bottom corner, that bottom left-hand corner, is misery. Misery for everyone. Now, on the left-hand side, I've indicated values. Your personal values. I've gained an appreciation of the importance of aligning your values with the values of the organization that you work for, because over time, even as you deliver results, if those values do not align, it's almost as if you're on a hot summer day and you drink a soda. Temporarily, you feel refreshed, but that refreshing doesn't last for very long. You want something to really quench your thirst. And so the importance, I think, of having values integrated with those other two characteristics of personal best and what you're really passionate about are critical. Now, understanding the matrix is the easy part. So how do you know where you lie on this matrix? How do you know what you're passionate about? How do you know where your strengths are? Well, I'm a big believer in learning by doing. I think it's easy to go out and read a book and study and kind of hone in on a particular area, but I believe until you really do something, it's really hard to know if that is where you will find the most joy and success. And therefore, I would encourage each of you early in your career to gain as broad experiences as you can, whether it's summer internships or whether it's co-op opportunities or volunteer work. And through those hands-on experiences, you will be able to find and kind of guide yourself where you will find the greatest amount of success. Now, notice how I didn't mention the importance of going to work for the company that paid you the most. And I think that's important because if you eventually find what you are passionate about and where you excel, you will find that success, and the companies will pay you competitively for the results that you deliver. So then how does finding the intersection of these three circles really tie into your development as a leader? Well, again, I mentioned the probability of success goes up of leadership also goes up when you have success. I think you ask yourself, would a company place you in a leadership role or an organization place you in a leadership role without first demonstrating success? I think all of us would agree that the answer would be no. That's very unlikely. And therefore, the first point in developing your leadership, discovering the future leader within you, is to define and establish where is the intersection of these three circles for you. Later in my career, I had the opportunity to work as an operations manager in a different factory, and this was my first role as an operations manager. And in this responsibility, I had engineers, production supervisors, technicians, and operations associates working in our department. And the company had made recent multi-million-dollar investments in a new product, and manufacturing equipment to make this product. And expectations were very, very high. They expected good plant performance, and the market was very, very ripe for the product that we were going to produce and sell. For a number of reasons, however, the project was tremendously behind schedule. And we were losing thousands of dollars every day against our plan. And we had recently turned on a 24/7 operation to recover to establish our position in the market. Our engineers and technicians were working extremely hard on all of this new equipment that we had procured. And for me, I felt like a potato kind of in this pressure cooker. We had so much pressure to deliver results. It was my first production management role. And I was really kind of in that bottom right-hand quadrant. I really enjoyed what I did, but I wasn't sure I could succeed fast enough for the company. And the equipment, because we procured a lot of this new equipment, we would get the equipment to run. It was very high-speed automation. We were running about 300 parts a minute. And the equipment would run, it would break, we'd find a solution, implement the fix, and get back into operation. We went through this over and over again. Well, one of our key machines went down on a Friday afternoon, just like it usually does. And we were going into the weekend, and I knew if we didn't get the production back up and running, we would lose the weekend, and it would be another couple of days lost against our schedule, thousands of dollars again lost, and the pressure would continue to be just enormous. The engineers, as I mentioned, were working tremendously hard and really needed a break. And there was another engineer who I'll call Tim, who worked in a different department, but who was very familiar with the equipment because he was in the procurement team that brought the equipment in. And he came to me the Friday afternoon and he said, "Hey, Matt, I'll tell you what, let's let the engineers and technicians have the evening off and get some much needed rest, and let you and me come back and let's see what we can do to get the line up and running." Now, I hadn't done hands-on engineering for a few years now, but I figured I'm desperate. I will do anything at this point to get the machines up and running. And so I agreed that we would work on it. And that night happened to be our work Christmas party. I had made a commitment to my wife that we were going to go on a date, and I really needed to keep that commitment. And so I said, "All right, Tim, I'll tell you what, let me take my wife on a date. I'll go back. I'll meet you at 10 o'clock. And so my wife, Christine, and I went out. I dropped her off at home, changed my clothes, went back into the plant. And at 10 o'clock, Tim and I went to work. At 10 o'clock became 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock became 12 o'clock. And finally, about 6 o'clock the next morning, we were able to get this machine back up and running, which meant that the whole line could run, and we were back in operation. Now, I can tell you the fix that we implemented was by no means pretty, but we were back into operation and made it through the weekend until a more robust solution could be implemented. The thing that I learned from Tim in this situation was the concept of personal accountability and really owning the output of a result. And in my experience, what organizations and employers are really looking for are individuals who will be completely accountable for achieving the result. I believe that to the extent that you accept and own personal accountability for your thoughts, your words, your actions, you will have greater success as an individual and as a leader. And I believe that leaders who are successful truly understand this concept. So then how do you develop your own level and identify your own level of personal accountability? And to that end, I'd like to share this slide, a little bit of a stairway. And each step on the stairway refers to a level of where we might find ourselves on this kind of continuum of personal accountability. The phrases or the words that are listed here are those words or phrases that we might mention to ourselves when things go well, or more importantly, when they don't go well. And I would invite you to think back on the conversations that you've played in your own mind when things recently have gone well or they haven't gone well. Maybe think about a recent test that maybe you didn't score as well as you wanted to, or an assignment that you didn't complete to the best of your ability. Think about the conversation that you played in your mind. You know, I remember thinking back, well, you know, the teacher didn't teach us this concept. How was I supposed to know that we were going to cover this aspect? Or, you know, he tested us on something that was very different than what I expected. Those conversations, I think, are ones which we play to ourselves over and over again, and that gets us down in this bottom level of the stairway. However, when our internal private conversations that we play to ourselves push us up the stairway, that becomes a more powerful stance. We own the result. We're accountable for the result. And I believe in what I've come to learn in my experiences, individuals and leaders who can make it happen are those that truly succeed in life. I think we'd agree that in this example, we see this type of behavior from time to time, right? And this is the behavior that puts us down in the bottom of that stairway. And in contrast, this mouse clearly understands the concept of personal accountability. Whatever it takes, he's going to get that cheese, right? and I love that image. The second point to discovering the future leader within you then is to establish what is your personal level of accountability. Have you ever entered a situation only to find it vastly different than what you expected? Maybe a class, you go into a class and you think, how in the world did I get myself into this class? What am I doing here? Or maybe a job or something like that. Later in my career, I had the opportunity to be a plant manager of a factory for the first time. And after counseling with my wife, Christina, and after prayerful consideration, we decided to move our family down to El Paso, Texas, and where I would have the opportunity to run a factory down in Juarez, Mexico. And so every day I would cross the border, drive about an hour down into Mexico, and manage this factory. And we had about 300 associates working in the factory. It was a fairly small plant. And I knew from the interview process that the plant had some issues, and I was excited about that. I was excited to be able to go in and to really make a difference. However, when I arrived there, I was amazed to learn the chaos under which the plant was at that point in time. Our waste was tremendously high. We were throwing away thousands and thousands of dollars every day in scrap. Our customers were just extremely angry. We were delivering product about 50% of the time on time. Our inventory accuracy was horrible. We thought we had parts that we needed, and when in fact we didn't, and we didn't have parts on hand that we actually needed. And so we were spending a lot of money in air freight, freighting parts in from suppliers, and then air freighting our product back to customers. And to top it off, the icing on the cake was in my office. The little air conditioning unit was broken. And if you've ever been in El Paso, in that region, the wind blows. And so in the morning, after the night of wind, I would come into my office and there would be this thin layer of dust everywhere. And so every morning I'd clear off the dust off my desk, and it was just really icing on the cake. And really the culture in the plant was everything was broken. It really didn't matter because everything was broken and there was just no way to fix it. Well, one of the projects that we identified early on when I was in the plant was that we were going to relay out a significant portion of our factory floor. And so we planned ahead. We got engineers and technicians lined up to work overtime and come in on a weekend when we would contract with a rigger who would come in and move some of this heavy equipment. We needed the rigger because the equipment was so large and heavy, and we just didn't have the ability to move that. And so Friday afternoon, we got everything all set to go, and we had communicated this broadly to the associates in the plant, and we had communicated this externally as well to the senior leadership, with whom we were talking almost on a daily basis. And one of our managers, Jose, was in charge of, who I'll call Jose, was in charge of this move and coordinated the overall efforts. And so I went home and on a late Friday afternoon, and I was very excited about the project. And I came back in on Monday morning, really pumped up to be able to see the changes and see how everything lined up. And I put my stuff in my office, and I walked out to the floor, and nothing was moved. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what in the world happened? People were coming into work, and it was as if all the planning that we had done, nothing happened. And I was confused at first, and then I was pretty angry. I was angry that we had done all this planning and nothing had occurred. And so, of course, I went over to Jose's office, and I said, Jose, what happened? How did we let this happen? And Jose, instead of giving me an answer that I kind of expected, he just shrugged and said, and kind of laughed with a cynical tone. He said, Matt, welcome to the plant. That's just the way things work here. And his team was with him, and they kind of burst into laughter. And as you can imagine, I was pretty hot at this point in time. And I said, Jose, how can you let this happen? We planned ahead, we paid overtime. How could you let this happen? You completely failed. You let everyone down. And I wanted to say that, but I actually didn't say that. And I remembered at that point in time the counsel that I received from a very wise boss of mine who counseled me to ask myself, what do you really want? What do you really want to accomplish by the conversation, by the discussion? Really be clear on your purpose. And in that moment, I of course wanted the production floor layout changed. I wanted our performance to improve. I needed Jose. I wanted Jose to be a player on our team because we had a lot of important projects that we were going to continue to execute. But more importantly, I wanted to really change the culture in our plant. And so I didn't have that conversation right then. I did have that conversation with Jose in private in a very productive and meaningful way about performance. But the opportunity to define the purpose of the plant, to set expectations for our team, was done in a more controlled and in a more thoughtful fashion. And so I believe that defining our purpose is very critical in the small and simple activities that we do. And I love this slide also. There's no question that the lion definitely knows what he is setting out to do, and he has a very clear purpose in his mind. I've come to appreciate that leaders who are effective and successful are very clear on what they are trying to achieve. And they not only focus this in the big, large decisions of their lives, they do this in the small, everyday actions. So how do you discover what your purpose is? I believe it's important to think before you enter a situation, whether it's even a phone call or an email you're going to write. Really clearly ask yourself, what am I trying to get done here? What am I trying to accomplish? Sometimes we go into meetings, and you'll find this as you go throughout your career. You're sitting in a meeting with 10 people, and you're scratching your head thinking, I have no idea why we're here. I'm not exactly sure what we're trying to accomplish. It's very fair to ask, what is the objective? What are we trying to accomplish in this meeting? I believe another very powerful and real way we can develop this is in our personal lives. If you're married and have children, I think a very good and healthy practice is at the end of the day, before you pull into your driveway or walk in your front door, to pause for that 30 seconds of time and ask yourself, I am now just about to enter my home and do the most important work that I'm going to do all day. What am I really trying to do here? It's more than just go to dinner, have dinner, put my kids to bed, and go to sleep. It's building an eternal family. The third point then is in discovering the future leader in you is to be clear about and stay focused on your purpose. I invite you to think for a moment about a leader in your life that you admire. And I'm not talking about someone you've read about or seen in the news, someone you know on a personal level. This may be a father, your mother, a mission president, maybe someone you've worked for. And think for a moment, what is it about that individual that you really admire? Something that they do makes you actually want to follow them. Maybe it's the words that they choose when they talk to you. Maybe it's the energy that they give to you. Whatever it is, for some reason, you come away feeling inspired and you actually want to be a better person. Not only do they have your mind, but I would argue that they have your heart. And you, again, you want to follow them. So I'd like to just briefly talk about two types of leaders. This is the sheep herder. The sheep herder obviously is clear about his purpose. He knows where he wants to take the sheep. He has a few tools with him. He has his dog, he has his gun, he has his horse, and he's going to drive them where he wants them to go. But ask yourself, why do the sheep follow the sheep herder? Is it because they trust him, or do they fear being pushed, prodded, or driven? And ask yourself, does the sheep herder really care about the sheep? Maybe, maybe not. If he loses one or two along the way, but he gets the flock to where he wants to go, maybe he would call that success. Another type of leader is, in contrast, the shepherd. Think about this type of leader. And notice where he is in position relative to the sheep herder. He's out in front, and the sheep herder was behind driving and pushing. And now ask yourself, why do the sheep follow the shepherd? Do they follow because they truly want to? And if so, why? And what has the shepherd done to instill that trust in them? Instead of fear, there is an element of safety, and there is familiarity. They know him, they know his voice, and they follow him again because they trust him. And oftentimes I think that when we think of leadership, we think of someone who's controlling and commanding. And that, of course, gets the mind engaged, but I believe that there is more to be engaged as a leader. It's not only the mind, it's the heart. And I believe that a leader is effective when they not only get the mind, but the heart. Now, does a shepherd at times have to push and have to drive? Absolutely. Does a shepherd leader at times have to have the difficult conversations about accountability and responsibility? Of course. Developing shepherd characteristics is definitely not weakness. So then how do we discover the shepherd in ourselves? I believe that the prophet Alma actually hits this concept squarely when he says, by small and simple things are great things brought to pass. So what are some of those small and simple things? I believe it's the simple thank yous to our team when they do a good result. I believe it's going out of your way to understand about the individual's family, about their wants and interests. I believe it's about being honest and congratulating the team and passing off some of your energy to the team that you lead. Really, for those of you who have served missions, it's a lot of the same skills that you learned on your mission. It's building on common beliefs and establishing those relationships of trust. As we exhibit these traits and these behaviors, we receive not only the buy-in of the mind, but also the heart. And I believe that those combined are much more powerful than just one. The fourth point then is to discover your ability to be not only the sheep herder, but the shepherd. Now, leadership sometimes is fun, and leadership sometimes is pretty scary. At times in your life, you'll have leadership responsibilities that you feel very unprepared for. But when we have confidence in ourselves, when we prepare, and when we have purpose, and when we most of all trust in the Lord, I believe that we can be successful. On the continuum of leadership, to me, it's very broad, and I feel that to become a leader, there is so much to learn. Personally, I feel like I'm on this continuum, I'm about right here, and I have a great deal to learn. And with leadership, we can read books, we can study, but sometimes, at the end of the day, we have to go out and just do it, and do our best. Leadership is one of those things that you just have to get out there and do it. In conclusion, as you identify the intersection of your values, your passion, and your personal best, as you establish your own personal level of accountability, as you define your purpose clearly, and as you become not only the sheep herder but the shepherd also, you will in fact discover the leader that is within each of you. The world is starved for good men and women, leaders who act with integrity and character and purpose. And I'm very confident that each of you will rise to the many leadership challenges that you face and be successful in these endeavors. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take a few of those at this time. Okay.
Can you explain exactly what you said to Jose when he said this is just how it is?
Yeah, so the question was, what did I say to Jose? Sure. In those performance conversations, personally, I think it's best to be as direct as possible. And so when I had the conversation with Jose, we sat down in his office and we planned time. I planned out what I was going to say. It wasn't just shooting from the hip because personally, I don't believe I'm good in those kinds of situations. I need to really think, what is the message I'm trying to communicate? So I talked to Jose, and I told Jose, I think you missed executing on this project. And I want you to know that very clearly. I think your reaction to my question was unacceptable. You're a manager, you represent the plant, and I expect you to be a leader in this factory. You're not just an individual that doesn't have a stake, you have a stake in the future of the factory. Now tell me, Jose, how do you see this? Am I off base? What am I missing? And we had an open and honest conversation. At the end of the conversation, I expressed my confidence in Jose. I didn't really know Jose that well at the time, but I said, look, you're a key member of the team, and I appreciate you being here, and I really want you to succeed, and only if you succeed, I can be successful. So I'm here to help and do everything I can to help the factory be successful. Now going forward, this is what I expect to see different. And I lay out 1 or 2 or 3 things that were very simple yet that I thought were fair. And that was pretty much the nature of the conversation. Probably the thing that I would add to that was I truly believe in those situations before firing off what you may want to say, a good conversation over there. Just help me understand. Seek to understand. Help me get me to where you are, because clearly I may be missing something. And so that's pretty much the nature of the conversation.
How did you decide that you wanted to go
Into management? Yeah, so the question was, how did I decide I wanted to go into management? Really, that kind of a few of those experiences, like I mentioned early on, where I had engineering roles, which I truly enjoyed, technically challenging. But I really enjoyed the team leadership, the human aspect, even more than the engineering, the kind of the raw technical challenges. And that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of those experiences, and those, and really reflecting was what kind of drove it for me. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay.
What are some of the things that took you from an operational manager to VP? Or some of the things that made you stand out from other operational managers?
That's a good question. Question was, what are some of the things that made me stand out from others? Excellent question. Part of what I think we discover in life sometimes is timing. You're in the right place at the right time, and you have, for whatever reason, the project you're working on, the business you're in, has a great deal of success, and somehow you're associated with that. I think another aspect is, again, I think companies and organizations are really looking for people who can get the results in a very positive way. It's not about stepping over people and driving at the cost of the human aspect. And so I don't know is probably my short answer, but I think it's when you have success, it opens up opportunities for you to do other things. That's probably the way I would leave it. And again, timing, for whatever reason, matters.
As a leader, you kind of are in charge of a bunch of different little projects, which can add up to a lot of stress. How do you handle that?
The question is, as a leader, you have to manage a lot of different things, and how do you handle the stress? I think for me personally, I find that there's a few things that in my life that reinvigorate me. And there aren't, if you think you're busy today as a student, I always thought I was tremendously busy. There's no way I was ever going to be busier than I was as a student. But you'll find that you will be very busy once you start having family, church responsibilities, etc. And I think in my own personal life, I found the best way for me to manage that is to find ways to give yourself a little boost of energy. Maybe for me personally, I enjoy exercise. I take a few minutes in the morning to clear my head, lets me think about my day. I spend time with my family, serve in my church calling. Those 2 or 3 things bring me a great deal of personal satisfaction. And apart from that, there's not a lot of hours left over. But I find energy from those things, and those things help me manage the stress personally. Any other questions? Yes?
Was it hard for you to find something that was both your passion, that you were very good at, and within the values that you wanted? And if not, like, what would you share for those that do struggle to find it?
So the question was it hard for me to find that? And what advice I would give to others to find those? Again, for me, initially, yeah, I think it was a little bit challenging. You know, you're fresh out of school, you have a lot of new skills that you've acquired, and you're kind of trying to find your way. And I think, for me personally, the power of reflection, I think, was very important. Sometimes I think, myself personally, I don't take enough time to kind of sit back and reflect and do so in a meaningful way. I took time to write down my thoughts, you know, in a journal or whatever, you know, and as you refer back to some of those are really meaningful, and they kind of help you identify the underlying interests that you may have. So for me, yeah, it was a little bit, but I think as you go through 2 or 3 or 4 assignments early in your career, you'll be able to kind of know, you know what, I like this, and you know, I had this experience, and I never want to touch that again. But very valuable experiences. I think another very powerful way is to just try different things. Summer internships are great. I had a couple of summer internships when I was an undergrad and in graduate school, and more often than not, I crossed things off the list more than I added to the list. I said, wow, I did that. I thought I would like it, but you know, I really didn't like that as much as I thought I would. And so I think getting those broad experiences as early as possible are very helpful, or they were for me anyway. Okay, thank you very much.